This is an interview with Noel Schneider, the Comfort Inn, Brooklyn, New York. It is the 19th of March, 2003, approximately 10:50 a.m. The interviewers are Mike Russert and Wayne Clark.
Mike Russert, Tim Russert, any part
He's
of
my
it?
cousin.
Oh, how about that?
Yes.
Yeah. Strange name. You don't hear that very often.
No. Could you tell us your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
I was born in Brooklyn, New York, July 31st, 1920.
Okay. What was your education prior to entering military service?
High school.
Okay.
I also went to an art school, the Mechanics Institute, for 2 years.
All right. Where were you, and what do you remember when you heard about the news of Pearl Harbor?
I was working on a fishing boat. I was a commercial fisherman. And at that time, I came back, and my mother and father told me what had happened. And I was really shocked. We had been out at sea and came back. And I decided what I really wanted to do. I enlisted. A week later, I went down to register with the Coast Guard.
Why did you pick the Coast Guard?
Because I was used to smaller boats. And I'd done that for a number of years. And I felt that was the best way I can serve, you know. So I joined them. I was sworn in January 2nd, 1942. And I was there until June 1946, over 4.5 years.
Where did you go for your basic training?
Ellis Island.
Ellis Island.
They didn't have any place to put it. When I went in, I think the whole outfit only had about 8,000 people altogether. That was the Coast Guard. That included these lifeboat stations and various and sundry things besides ships. Very small outfit.
What did they do with you on Ellis Island? What did you do?
They put us right to work. They said basic training, but they sent us to a loading dock where they're loading ammunition on foreign ships to supervise. And I tell you, it scared the hell out of me because they put me on some British ship and went all the way down in the hold. They were loading aerial bombs, 500-pound aerial bombs. And the way they drop them down, they go zip all the way down, and about 2 feet off the deck, they stop it. But I didn't know. I went. The stevedores were laughing. You know, to them it was fun, but gee, I was scared to death.
Did you get any other specialized training?
Later on, I did. I can tell you how I worked it out. I was apprentice seaman when I went in. As apprentice seaman, I shipped out to, they put me over in Staten Island on a Coast Guard cutter. The Beach was the name of it. And I made second class seaman. And from there I was transferred to a new school. It was an 83-footer school, they called it, for anti-submarine warfare. It was brand new. And I was in the first class, but when I got it was up the Coast Guard Academy up in New London. When I got there, they weren't quite ready for us. So I was mess cooking for the cadets for about a month. And then we went into training. It was like the Green Berets are getting today, because they didn't know what these guys are going to do on these boats. The 83-foot boats, they were made in Coney Island in Brooklyn. Very good sea boats, wonderful. Done by Wheeler's Shipyard, who used to make yachts. They made them in Coney Island Creek, believe it or not. And as far as I was concerned, the best sea boat I was ever on, and I was on many boats.
What do you think made it such a good ship?
The way it was built, oh, it was rocky and. Well, we used to do convoy work. I'll go into that later if you wish.
Sure.
You had to keep up with the ships. And these things were only 83 feet out of wood. They had gasoline engines, big ones, Sterling Vikings. At that time, top speed was like 15 knots. But the ships then were only doing about 6. And we used to do coastwise convoy. I did that for many months. It was a rough session. This was in the summer of 1942 when they were knocking them off. We used to run from Sandy Hook down to Cape Henlopen. And then that's where the Delaware River was. They went up to Philadelphia from there. But we used to run that section along New Jersey coast. And they knocked them off like peanuts, the subs. They used to have the people were told to keep lights off that lived along the beach or wherever. And many didn't. But they used to lay offshore, and when the ship went by between the light and where they were, they would see their silhouette and torpedo them. I had the pictures that was taken on one of the convoys of the ships that was sunk. The water there was not that deep. When they were sunk, you'd see parts of them sticking out of the water. It was a very bad session. We couldn't do much. We were only a wooden boat, and the subs weren't afraid of us. But orders were to ram them. We were supposed to ram them. They were steel. A joke. The armament on these boats at that time was nothing. We had a 50 caliber machine gun and 2 30 caliber machine guns and about 8 depth charges, which wasn't anything. Later on, they improved. They gave us sound gear. They gave us a 20 millimeter, and then they gave us well, they didn't have it in those days. That was early. But they called them mouse traps, like rockets we used to shoot. They were like fingers. They had them in the front of the boat, and they were like little rockets. And they used to use the boat as the gun. It was 300, I forget, it was yards or feet, probably yards, 327 yards. You shoot them up in the air, and they would go right down. They would had a propeller on the front of them. And they would turn when they would arm it. I don't know if people don't understand too much of this, but and when they hit something solid, they would explode. That was later on. At this time, we had nothing like that. What really did happen was, if you dropped a depth charge and it wasn't set for the depth of the water, it was low water in these areas, maybe less than 100 feet, they wouldn't explode because they go by water depth and pressure. So there are many still laying out there, I'm sure, torpedoes and everything else laying offshore New Jersey coast. They pick them up every once in a while, I know. You read about it, the trawlers. So, but it was a very bad session. We couldn't even get liberty. We had to stay on board ship. We were stationed at Sandy Hook in New Jersey. They had a fleet of, I don't know, about 4 or 5 of these boats. That's where we wound up. And I was on that one.
Excuse me, sir, how many were on a crew?
We had a crew at that time, about 17 to 20, something like that. If you had an extra man or two, they had what they call hot sacks. They let them go on liberty, but that was later on because they didn't have enough room. They didn't carry too many people, but they needed a crew. So we did other work besides convoy, like boarding ships or whatever, if necessary. And we used to, as a matter of fact, the boat I worked on this fishing boat, the captain got a contract with the government. This is pre-war, this is before the war, to put down a grid, an anti-submarine warfare grid to the entrance to New York Harbor. And we used to take them out, and these guys would set the stuff on the bottom. They used the boat as, a station, and they would lay it out. This was all done, and later on, I knew how it worked because we used to use it. if a ship went across this grid and they didn't know who it was, you were sent out to check them out, see who it was. At that time, they had the entrance to New York Harbor. They had an anti-submarine grid where they made out of cable, and they had two boats. When a ship would be coming in, they would open it up, pull it open, and as soon as they got past, they'd close it up again. No sub would get through. It's like an anti-submarine thing there. But if they spot anything made a sound going over this grid that wasn't supposed to be there, they used to send somebody out to check them, which is why we got away with murder there, because these guys were all over the place, the subs, U-boats. They were up and down the Long Island coast, New Jersey coast that I know about, because we saw them. They didn't bother with us because we couldn't do anything to them. Basically, you were there when the ships got torpedoed to pick up the people that were on board. You know, it was a miserable time, believe me. I did that for months. This is the whole summer of 1942.
How far out did you go?
Oh, you right offshore, a couple of miles, not that far. They didn't want to get into too deep water. Whatever these ships can handle. It was probably about under 100 feet, I would say. It was inside the shelf. I'd say that the draft, they would be all right. But they were slow. They were all beat up pieces of junk in those days. Everything that was left over from World War I, I guess, was floating around. But that was the beginning of the war. That was a bad time for us. So I did that on this particular boat. I was on there for about 9 months. And after 9 months, they took us off because your kidneys went bad from bouncing. We used to have to go in all kind of weather with these convoys. And we finally found out that the springs, the bunks had springs in them. We took them out and put canvas in instead because it was too much of a bounce. So that was the first 9 months that I was on these things. But I put about over 2 years in on them. Instead of getting transferred somewhere else, they transferred me to another one that was just put into commission to help to train the crew that was going back to the Coast Guard Academy to go to school. And I got off at that point. That time I was a coxswain. I was first-class petty officer, third-class petty officer. And I was teaching the cadets blinker because I was good at that. It's Morse code with lights. And I did that for about a month and a half or whatever until another ship shaped up for a crew, and I went on there.
So you didn't stay with the same crew all the time?
No. I was on this with the same crew for about 9 months. Then I was transferred back to the academy on this. I got something else here I can show you. Where I was, I thought this might help too. This is, you'll read the whole, my whole business with the Coast Guard.
Okay.
From one ship to another, or whatever it was. This was on a discharge. Do you want to see it?
Well, actually, save it till
The end.
All right, I just had it there
Sure.
because I have to refresh my own memory. I forget the numbers of these boats. Originally, the boats were called 400 boats. Pre-war, at the beginning of the war, they only had a couple of these. They were a little bit different than the ones I went on. And then they changed the numbers to 83 and whatever number came after that.
Do you know why they called them 400 boats?
There was a number they designated. So the one I went on at first, the designation was 493, but they changed the number to 83. I forget what it was. And that was the way I don't know why they did it, but they never had a name. It was just a number.
Did you do a lot of rescue work, actually picking up crews?
Yes. Well, we picked up people that got torpedoed, bodies, whatever. It wasn't nice, believe me. But at that time, they had nothing else. I mean, we weren't even trained properly. They said boot camp, but there was no boot camp up. Ellis Island was one big mess. As a matter of fact, they had us guarding the prisoners. They had these Nazis or whatever from the Germans and Italians that they grabbed. We used to guard them with the FBI. I mean, it was a whole mess.
So they were kept on Ellis Island?
Yes, yes.
What kind of weapons did you carry?
We didn't carry any. Well, we watched them. We carry a Tommy gun, sidearms, 45, whatever it was. But that was at Ellis Island. Now I wasn't there too long.
As a Coast Guard crewman, did you carry like the old Springfield rifle, or did you have?
We had them on board, but we had all kind of weapons. Basically, had what they call rising.
Oh, okay.
The worst gun I ever saw in my life. If you couldn't hit the side of a barn with them. But they shot 45 caliber bullets like a machine gun, but they were worthless.
Right.
We had Tommy guns. We had Springfield 03s, 45s, the Navy Colt, 38s. Some of them. They not much. Later on, they got better guns, of course, but at that time, they had really nothing. I don't think we were really prepared.
What was your uniform? Did you wear the dungarees?
Dungarees, yeah.
Okay.
Actually, the Coast Guard wasn't that like the Navy. Navy's kind of GI. With small boats or whatever, you wore any damn thing. Nobody really cared. I mean, the crew was very small. The officers didn't care. They all slept on on a boat with a couple of guys. You had 9 guys in a forecastle. There were 2 bunks in the galley. There were 2 bunks for the officer or chief. And then they had hot sacks where they didn't have enough bunks. You needed more men to stand watch. Then you'd get out and the other guy jump in.
Oh, I see. So you.
Or they'd have people on leave to be able to have enough room you had to sleep, As a matter of fact, sometimes you were so short-handed, you used to stand 12 and 12, 6 and 6, different watches. It wasn't easy. But then that was before the draft. Actually, I didn't even have a draft card when I went in. I was 20. They started at 21. But I figured going to go anyway, might as well pick my own.
Sure.
But I had no complaints. I really liked the Coast Guard. It was nice. I was glad I went there rather than the Army. I don't go for that stuff.
How was the chow? Pretty good?
Oh, yeah. When you had it. Now, later on in that, too, we used to run out of food because they couldn't get in. I used to have to, I'm jumping around here a little bit.
Well, let me ask about the summer of 42, the 9-month patrol. What kind of food did you have then?
Oh, it was good. It was good. You bought your own food. We used to buy it from Bohack. We had like an open, or the cook did. They allowed so much a man a day, but we bought whatever food. You couldn't buy anything but food. You couldn't buy like a coffee maker or something like that. But food, they never argued if they went over the amount that they were allotted. Food was good.
How long were you on patrol? How many days or?
You'd only go out for 4 or 5 days, maybe a week. We had no showers on board, and it was very tight quarters. You couldn't stay out too long, and we had to go on the base to take showers and stuff.
Okay, after you left the Coast Guard Academy, after you were on the beach, you went to the Coast Guard Academy, then where did you go?
The beach was a ship. It was a buoy tender. That was a small buoy.
Yeah.
From there, I went to another one. This was the second 83-footer, where they had a crew that didn't know anything, and I was on there with the chief bosun mate. I was a third-class petty officer. And we tried to train these kids before they got to the academy. We had to take the boat from Stapleton, Staten Island, up to New London, Connecticut. So we had to get him primed a little bit, you know. I was only on there for a short while. Then I was taken off, and they kept me on base teaching the cadets to blanket. They had to do something for a living, you know. Then when another crew was made up, I went on the third one. This one here is where I got this picture here. This was the one. That was taken down at Charleston, Coast Guard base, the foot of Tradd Street.
Now, you said this is you here.
Yeah, that's me right there. Yeah, I remember everybody's name but one, believe it or not. This, what, 60 years ago? That's a long
Now,
time ago.
what was the highest ranking officer on one of these?
JG, Lieutenant JG. And then you had a chief. And then after the chief, you had myself. You had sound men who handled the sound gear later on. At first, we had something that they used just by hearing with earphones, wheels turning, the screws of a boat. Later on, we got regular sound gear where they send out the pings. You must have heard them.
Yes.
Submarines and all that. That was later, but at the beginning, it was very, very sparse in the way of material. They didn't have anything.
Okay. Want to continue with your story then?
Yeah, so we went down there, and then we were, we either served on convoy or patrol or whatever we had to do, either in Charleston or, this is all 6th Naval District now. Originally I was at what they call the 3rd Naval District. That was the New York District. They changed all that now. It's all changed. I think Boston is the center of the whole thing. But at that point, they had naval districts. So that we used to run from there. And we were down around the Cape Fear River. This was North Carolina. There was a Navy base at Southport, North Carolina, where they had a flotilla of us, and also Navy 110-foot subchasers. And from there, we would either convoy or patrol or whatever. That was the duty over there, which I did then until, I was on there over a year, this one, the third one. As a matter of fact, I was in contact with the captain, the lieutenant. He treated the crew like his own children. He was a young guy himself, but he was very nice with the crew, like a buddy, you know. But he was still the officer. But up until this last Christmas, I was getting a Christmas card from him every year, and I used to send him one, tell us what's going on. He was, he tried to keep in touch with part of the crew anyway. But I don't know, he might have died, I'm not sure.
Okay, after you were in the 6th Naval District, what happened then?
I was transferred off after over a year it was on this one boat. You got the number over there. And then I was sent to James Island, they call it a receiving ship. That's where you go between ships where you're going to get retransferred. And from there I went on to a big cutter, 165, 185-foot cutter. It's all purpose, did everything. Buoy tending, salvage, rescue, all kind of stuff. This one was built up in Duluth, but the crew that was the crew on there came out of every brig up in the Great Lakes area. When I came on board, I wasn't a big guy, but these guys were. These were all lumberjacks, you know, from up in the North Woods and all that kind of stuff. And they were tough, but we did all kind of dirty work. It was. I didn't care for that too much. I wasn't on there too long. I had put in for a transfer from the 83-footer when they sent me to James Island. And this was laying around, and I was on there, I don't know, number of months, 3, 4, whatever. And I got transferred down to New Orleans to go on an LST. Now, I was traveling then with a fellow, Willie Green. He was a first-class motor mech. At this time, I had made second-class bosun mate. And they pinned the orders together. He was the SOPA, because he was a grade higher than I was. And we went down to New Orleans to the pool. They had a pool down there where you had to hang out until you assigned a ship. I was there for about a month and a half, and I was, as a bosun mate, I was a master at arms at the barracks for the men from the Coast Guard. And one day they put up a sign in the, in the office, they're getting rid of the pool. So I went up to the office to find out what's going on here. He said, "Where were you?" I said, "I've been here for the last 6 or 8 weeks." "No, you weren't." So I was getting paid every 2 weeks, which I was. I said, "And I was a master at arms. Didn't you know that?" "Well," he said, "we thought you were over the hill." I said, "How can I be over the hill collecting my check?" Anyway, they found out that our orders were pinned together. His was on top. So they had Willie Green, I don't know where the heck he wound up, but they had me assigned to a ship, but they never found me. And this is red tape. Actually, this LST was blown up in Subic Bay, so I guess I didn't miss very much landing in the Philippines. Anyway, they broke it up and they sent me to Alaska. Whole contingent of men, petty officers going up, motor mechs and bosun mates, for further transfer wherever. That was the 17th Naval District. That was the North Pacific. And when I got up there, I was at the base in Ketchikan, waiting for reassignment. And it was funny up there. They put you to work, you had to do something, and all the petty officers that were up there, we were blowing up a mountain they called Deer Mountain. Deer Mountain was mostly shale. At that time, they were starting to build the Yalcan Highway. And at that time, it was a corduroy road. I don't know if you understand. What they would do is make layers. They'd have a layer of logs, and they'd have a layer of shale. And they pile it up until it stays fairly constant where you could ride over it. And we were knocking down this mountain for shale. We used dynamite, you know. And we were doing bulwark. What happened was that we hit all there was gold in there, believe it or not, but you couldn't get it out. But what we did find was iron pyrite, fool's gold. This is just an anecdote anyway. So it looks perfect. It looks more like gold than gold does because it's in squares and rectangles and metal, you know, real metal. So we used to get this and put them in Bull Durham sacks. You rolled your own cigarettes, you know. A new contingent came up, a bunch of seamen came up. Well, we had the mess hall. Everybody came out with our bags of gold, and these kids, we poured out, you know, how much gold you get today, you know. Well, they couldn't wait to get on duty to be able to knock down this mountain. Anyway, that didn't last long. We got off and they put them on. But it was, well, what happened after that was we got assigned further transportation where we got to go. I was assigned to a lighthouse in the Bering Sea. And a fella there, one of the other guys, he said, "Listen, I got a friend up there. How about you and me swapping?" I said, "Why? Where you going?" He said, "I'm going out to a place that too." Who the hell knew where it was, you know? I said, "Well, it makes no difference. We're up here going to be here for at least a year and a half, you know." So we swapped. They let you do that. It made no difference to them who went where, same rate. Anyway, what I was trying to say was that during my tour out in Attu, there was an upheaval. See, it's volcanic islands. The Aleutian chain is all volcanic. There was an area there right outside the chain they call the Aleutian Deep that was still volcanic, that was still doing dirty work. And sometime during that following year or so, there was an upheaval that created a tidal wave. The tidal wave went down as far as Hawaii, did a lot of damage. And it went north and south like this because the chain ran east and west. The other part went up north, south and north, and it went over this island and wiped them out, over the whole island where this lighthouse was.
Were you going to be a
Yeah, I didn't even know about it. I read it in one of the Coast Guard books that they were wiped out. I think they had about 8 or 10 men on there. Anyway, we were notified about this because we had a couple of boats that we used. We had to pull them up. They told us there was a tidal wave coming, but it didn't hit us. We had to pull them up because we, as I showed you on that other thing, we were on top of like a plateau, a mountain 400 feet up in the air. So we missed it. But lucky break. It's twice I got away with it.
Yeah.
Once from Subic Bay and once was up here.
When you were on Attu, you said you had some kind of secret assignment there? What was
It was
that?
a Loran station. Top secret. They used to bomb Japan from, but up there you couldn't see. The planes couldn't get back to their base. They couldn't get there because the weather was so terrible. So they had this Loran, it was brand new, where they triangulated, where they didn't have to see anything, but they can get back. But we were the slave station. We were on Attu. There was another one in Adak, another island. That was a master and a slave, and they used to get be like a V, and they would be pinpointed. They would know exactly where they were because the next island to Attu was Shemia, where they had bombers working. They used to bomb Japan from there. And we used to see these guys coming back with holes in the side. Used to wag their wings when they came over the station, thanking you. But that's what was, you couldn't even put it down. We had to, if you put down Loran on your letters home, they'd cut them out. It was top secret. I couldn't even tell them what kind of a station I was on, you know. So I was out there for over a year.
What was it like there?
It was crazy. The weather was horrible. Terrible weather. You'd have snow, sleet, rain, hail all in one day. We used to live in Quonset huts. They had it looked like an H. There were 5 Quonset huts. Then we had the other, where they had the equipment for the Loran was by itself. And there was so much snow that we used to have to dig out almost every day. Otherwise, if there was a fire, you were dead. You couldn't get out. There was no windows. The Quonset huts were dug into the ground because of the winds. They have willow-wars up there that used to come up in 2 seconds, blow 100 miles an hour. And they did an awful lot of damage. As a matter of fact, my job there was basically to run supplies into the beach through the surf. As a bosun mate, you couldn't go with a motorboat because there was no beach. It was all volcanic rock, stone, and they had reefs. I mean, it was very, very horrible to navigate. You couldn't do it. We used to have to go out, call in for the Navy to send out a supply ship. We'd have to go out with a dory. It was about a 18, 20-foot dory. I'd have 4 men rowing, and I was the sweep boy. I would steer it. and you had to get out through this channel that we had a dynamite in between the reef. To get out there, you had to go out offshore enough that they didn't get involved with the reefs. And depending on the weather, I would either tell them not to come or to come or whatever. If the weather's halfway decent, we go out through the surf. It was rough.
Mhm.
And that was the only way we got our supplies in. When you couldn't go out, sometimes the weather was so bad, like for weeks, we ran out of food. We'd ask for an airdrop for them to come over with a plane and drop something. And one time we really got angry. We called in for a drop, and they sent in a big case of, what was it, spinach instead of food. And of course everybody smoked, they wanted cigarettes. It was no good. As a matter of fact, one time we ran out of food, and the weather moderated a little bit, and we went cod fishing to bring in something to eat.
Did you get a lot of spam?
Yeah. Yeah, we had stocks of that stuff, but I mean, after a while, even that ran out. I mean, if you go for weeks without food, you got to feed, what, we had 17 to 20, 22 men, whatever it was.
What did you use as a fuel?
Oh, I have a picture. I think I got a picture I can show you. See this? I thought you'd be interested in that. We got a barge in. See this barge here? They're lousy pictures because we didn't really have a clear. This is even a better one. We used to see this little space. We had to dynamite that so these guys can get in with the barge. On that barge, they had barrels of oil.
I'm sure.
I can't really get in that well, but
Yeah, that's very hard.
okay.
They had oil on there. We used to pump it up 400 feet up in the air. We had a big dump of empty barrels that we used because we had generators on there to supply electricity in order to be run the Loran station, the Loran part of it. And they had to pump it up from the barrels on board to pump it up the mountain to get it into the other barrels. That's how we got our fuel in. It was a tremendous dump that we had up there. But that had to last us because it can only get in maybe sometime in the spring. They'd come in and we'd be able to get it up there. But
Now, what kind of clothing did you have? Did you have a lot of specialized clothing?
we had winter clothing, but not like they have them today, believe me. They had parkas and stuff. As a matter of fact, I had a picture
you showed
here.
me,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Now,
Parkas.
is that you in the...
That's me, yeah.
I'm getting low glare. Can you turn that a little?
Which,
Yeah, right there. Now, did you ever have any medical emergencies while you
We
were
had a
there?
pharmacist mate on board. He was. We had a pharmacist mate at all times. As a matter of fact, the guy used to what you call going ape. I don't know if you ever heard that expression. But everybody up there was nuts anyway. And they wanted to get their ears pierced. At that time, they had dimes. These anecdotes. Dimes were made out of silver at that point. They didn't have any other junk. And they would carve out or grind out the heads or whatever, make an earring out of it, the guys on the station, for lack of something else to do.
Mhm.
And but then they had to get their ears pierced. So the pharmacist mate and I used to pierce their ears. He had the, when you sew somebody up with the needle, with the thread, and so I would hold the potato behind the ear and he would push it through. Then they have a string hanging out of there. They had to do this, move the string up and back so it didn't seal up. So you all had earrings in. That was what was going on up there.
They were ahead of their time, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
By today's standards.
Oh yeah, they used to make their own booze. They get a cask, a water cask that they get on board ship to keep for emergencies.
Uh-huh.
You put water and they put rice and potatoes and peels and all kind of junk. You let it sit behind the stove for about 3 weeks. then you got the maggots and all the junk that came in there. You had to pour it through some kind of a material to catch everything. And it came out purple. And these guys used to drink it. Blech. But look, what are you going to do? They did. I mean, look, this went on all over the place. It wasn't that much of liquor, but made them happy. But as I say, everybody was a little bit wacky anyway. We didn't care.
How long did you have an assignment of just a year up there, or were there some?
No, as a matter of fact, I was up there until the war was over. But I couldn't get out because I had to be relieved. They need somebody to run the boat in, to, be able to get the supplies in. I had to wait until somebody was relieved. I got out about 6 months early. The convenience of the government, I had enough. I was up there over a year, there about a year and a couple of months, and till I got relieved. And so I put in for it. Of course, they tried to get rid of as many people as they did after the war was over, so I was able to get home. As a matter of fact, I went back with NATS, Naval Air Transportation, and one of these big planes with 4 big engines. We had about 100 kids on there. I was supposed to be in charge because I was supposed to make first class at this time. I was a senior officer present, and I was supposed to go up to Kodiak Island to pick up my further orders to go back to the States. They wouldn't let me off the plane. I had to go all the way from Attu. I made a stop at Adak, picked a few more kids up. Then when we got to Kodiak, I had my gear packed. I was ready to jump off. They wouldn't let me go. I had to stay on until we got to Seattle. And I was there until my orders caught up with me for discharge. So that was quite a ride. It's about 1,400 miles just to chain from the mainland to where we were to get to the mainland of Alaska.
Was there ever any worry about Japanese subs?
Oh yeah, we used to see one. He was out to get us.
Uh-huh.
If he couldn't see because he's way down here, we're 400 feet up, and as I showed you on this little picture, he couldn't see us. He knew we were there because they were trying to get to this station to stop the planes from bombing. You used to see him out there. Occasionally the moon would come out, you'd see him. I don't know if you can't hardly see it. It looks like a fly speck.
This is the station here.
Yeah. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, he was there all the time. They never caught him. We used to call the Navy all the time, send somebody out and grab this guy. He was out there again, but he was looking. For the whole time I was there, he was out there looking. But good thing he didn't come in. We didn't have enough to save ourselves because it was just a few men,
So your communication with the outside world was through radio?
Radio.
How often did you get mail?
Oh, they used to drop the mail. They get mail in maybe once a week or whatever. They'd come over with a Navy plane or an Army plane, come over and drop it.
How about sending mail out? How often were you able to send out?
Well, you couldn't send it out every day. Only when I went out to pick up supplies could we give them a bag of mail.
Did you get movies or anything?
Yes, we would get supplies, we'd get movies. We saw movies over and over and over until we knew every word that was said.
But they never brought any live entertainment in, I take it.
No. I didn't see a woman in over a year, for God's sakes.
I was just going to ask about USO shows there.
They had them on the other part, and Massacre Bay was a Navy base, an Army base, but we were away from there. We were in this little piece of land here, and occasionally we would be able to get to Massacre Bay. They would send us over for something or another, some kind of business. But that was it. You were out there, you never saw anybody. The only people that we ever saw that used to show up, they had a ship out there, the Coast and Geodetic Survey. They had a ship there that was doing work. These guys would probably anchor come ashore once in a while. The only strangers we ever saw. It was too much togetherness.
Did you, while you were there, if you were there till the end of the war, did you hear about the death of President Roosevelt then?
We heard everything, yeah.
What was the reaction?
Well, I'm a little confused when he died. I don't know if I was there or where I was with him. The only thing I remember was when I showed you this thing of the Attu sun, which we never saw when the Nazis gave up.
Now,
I don't recall.
Do you remember where you were when they bombed Hiroshima?
Yeah, I was out in Attu. I was out there.
What did you think of it?
We thought it was the most wonderful thing that ever happened. Now I don't think the same thing. I haven't changed my entire attitude. But at that time, I mean, I was up to here. I mean, all of us were. And as far as we were concerned, let's get the hell out of here. So,
Now you mentioned that after the war you kept in contact with one of your officers. Did you keep in contact with anyone else?
just Bernie Blank, that's this guy here. He was a seaman.
Oh, okay.
He came from Brooklyn also. I met him on board ship. He was a crew member. Bernie Blank is now a psychologist who's retired. And as a matter of fact, he was my best man, and I was his best man.
Oh, really?
We're still in contact, and our wives are very friendly. They're part of our
Does
group.
he still live in the area? Or?
Yes, yes. As a matter of fact, he and I just finished the course in the community college. Bernie is a student. He's got 4,000 degrees, and he never stops. No, he's one of these kind of guys. He loves to study.
Yep.
And after I retired in 1960, I was 62 years old. And I went to school to go to get a college education, which I never had. And there's a community college across the street from where I live. So I went there, and I was at the age of 62 I started, because I retired at 62. And I got a degree in fine arts, which I still do. I do sculpture, painting. Yeah, I'm in Who's Who in American Art, actually.
Really?
Yeah. But this was my alter ego. But then I was just taking courses just to keep my mind active, because as a retiree, you better do something, you're going to go crazy. So he came along, he said, let's take the course in Fisheries and Marine Technology. I said, it sounds interesting. What do I need it for? I'm not going to use it. Ah, come on. So we took the course, we got the degree, both of us. So it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it, because from there, the school, that's the college, got a boat from the Coast Guard, actually, a cutter, was given to them for training on this program. And since I graduated and all this and that, I was crewing on the boat, the volunteer. For years afterwards, it was my summer vacation, because we would take out kids from the high schools, colleges, public schools on the boat. They had a deal with the Board of Education, and we'd take them out and teach them navigation and seamanship and how to fish with commercial fishing and all this and that, which I was into, you know. So my summers were going along fine for years. Until the ship, they didn't do enough work in the shipyards with it. Developed holes, and it was starting to make water. So they, what happened was that the shipyard took the boat in exchange for what they would have charged, you know, for the work they had done. And somebody bought it and had it fixed up. And it was in the Times. There was a picture of it, which I should have brought. We have it home. He lives on it. Yeah, it's an 82-foot. It was a Coast Guard cutter that had been around for many years. When the Coast Guard gets rid of it, they would give it to somebody like a school or whatever, instead of just dumping it. So this is where it wound up. So it's still being used.
Good.
They call this one the CUNY, City University
Oh,
of New
yes,
York.
okay. Did you ever make use of the GI Bill when you returned?
What did I do with that? Oh yeah, I went to a diesel school. I went for about 2 months. That was part of it. Then I also took up a course in the Art Students League, also for 2 months. When the boat tied up, we used to tie up in the winter time, the boat that I worked on. So that was the 2 times I used it. But
How
not
about the 5220 Club? Did you ever use that?
short while, 6 weeks. When I came out of the service, I was not completely sane, I don't think. No, I knew I was, there was something wrong. I was so used to not being with people, I couldn't.
Yeah.
So what happened, I used to, when somebody ring the doorbell, I'd run down the basement. I didn't want to see anybody. For about 6 weeks, then I went down the waterfront one day and I saw my old boss. He said, "When are you coming back to work?" So I went back to work on deck again. From there I understudied the engineer, and I learned the engine. I got a Coast Guard chief engineer's license. I had papers for that. Also, I had captain's papers that I took. So they were out of date because I couldn't show time when I went to work in this other business.
Did you ever join any veterans organizations at all?
Yeah, I did belong. As a matter of fact, I just signed up with the Coast Guard Veterans organization. I just signed up with them. I belonged to American Legion at one time and belonged to the Veterans, but I didn't care. They play cards. This is their deal. It wasn't my bag. I'm not really a joiner. But this is different. Bernie's into all this. He's in the volunteers with everything that they got, with the Navy, with the Coast Guard. And right now I don't do too much of anything anymore.
How do you think your time in the military affected your life in your service?
Oh, quite a bit. Quite a bit, because when I was working on the boats, I was taking trying to get my papers, captain's papers. I would have been running my own boat all these years now. I lost out, and I never really followed up on the art until I retired, really, or until about 50 years, when I got married. My wife started needling me a little bit, so I went back into it. And I've been doing this work now for about 50 years, sculpture, painting. But I lost a lot of years. I don't resent it, it's just at this time she mentions, listen, you lost a lot of, because I didn't get out until I was, what was I, at 20? I was at 25 and a half. 25 and a half, you're not young anymore. What did I have as a trade? Nothing, really.
How long did you get married after the war, after your discharge?
I got out, I got married about, actually I was engaged and I broke that off. And I was just floating around, and my sister fixed me up with my now wife. And we got married. I got married when I was 29. So, but we've been married 53 years now, so it's still the same old lady.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your interview.
Yeah, okay, if there's anything else.
Good.